One valid question was received from a member of the public to be asked at this meeting. Is Miss Robinson in attendance?
No, Chair.
No. In that case, we'll take the question as read. Councillor Johnson, would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the interest in bringing forward the remaining elements of the Smiths Dockside for additional residential development. The Smiths Dockside is located on the western extreme of the Fish Quay, as identified as a housing site in the 2017 local plan, being capable of sustaining some 815 homes. The site was also identified as a key housing opportunity in the North Shields and Fish Quay Master Plan, which was adopted in January 2021. An outline plan application was granted consent in 2013 for 815 units, and subsequent reserve matters applications, which provided detailed designs for Phase A and Phase B, were permitted in 2013 and 2016, providing 114 new homes. These units have now been built and include the plateau site, delivered by Urban Splash and Places of People, together with the stunning smokehouse apartments. Together, these have provided high-quality designs for the prominent site, which have set a quality benchmark for further development opportunities. In addition, the highway infrastructure linking Smiths Dock and Fish Quay with the Tyne Commission Quay and Royal Quays has also provided, which has created better connectivity between our roadside communities. In terms of future delivery, the site is owned by Places of People, who have always intended the site to be brought forward on a phased basis, working with other development partners. Therefore, the Council has no control over the pace of delivery, which is essentially a commercial matter for the owners and developers. However, we are aware that the site has encountered unforeseen challenges, and we have been working with Places of People to help resolve these and accelerate delivery on the site to bring forward high-quality new housing. Specifically, they have encountered some poor ground conditions, issues related to coal seam, which requires remedial groundworks. Working in partnership with North Tyne Combined Authority and Homes England, together with Places of People, we've still taken a successful case of funding and secured in principle an amount of up to £745,000 to address the ground conditions and accelerate the pace of delivery for future phases. The Council understands that Places of People is currently assessing the design and delivery options in light of the funding award. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, and also thank you to Mrs Robinson for her question. I have received apologies from Councillors Davy Drummond, Jim Allen, Janice Mole, Margaret Hall, Naomi Craven, Erin Parker-Leonard, Alan Percy, Kath Davis and John Sterling. Are there any other apologies? No, thank you. Declarations of interest. If any member has a declaration of interest, would they please raise their hand now?
Yeah. So,
Councillor Bell. Linda Bell. Please fill in your card. Councillor Thurlaway.
It's on the same emergency motion. I work for Parkside Care, which provides social care for adults.
Thank you. Councillor John O'Shea.
Chair, I don't know if it's relevant, but I do receive free medical prescriptions.
Thank you, Councillor O'Shea. I was about to say, anyone who receives free medical prescriptions, please fill in the card. Thank you. Can we agree the minutes of the last council meeting, which was held on the 23rd of September 2021? Thank you. We now move on to item 5, which is a report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Can I ask Councillor Martin Rankin to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. In moving this report, I'd like to thank Mr Anderson and his committee for the work they have done. And we're not sure whether he's going to actually be here tonight or not, unfortunately. In the interest of scrutiny and accountability, it is important that elected members' allowances are properly and independently reviewed each year. This report has done that. Residents will see the evidence of this. The recommendation within the report is that of no change, which is a continuation of the index link between council's allowances and the annual pay award for employees working under the National Joint Council for Local Government Services National Agreement on Pay and Conditions of Service. Where in the past the panel has recommended no change, it has always received cross-party support. I would ask the Council to agree the recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Do you have a seconder?
Formally second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I will now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Brockbank?
I'll make it brief, given the enormous number of motions we have in front of us. The Conservative group entirely accepts the recommendations. We think it's prudent, and as Conservatives, we're very keen not to waste public money, so we entirely endorse the report.
Thank you. Anyone else? We can now
There was
go...
moved to the vote.
Sorry?
I think there was moved to the vote, Chair.
Yes. We can now move to the vote on the motion. Those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Motion 1. Can I invite Councillor Bartoli to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion and reserve the right to speak, please.
Thank you.
We expect the following amendment to be moved. No?
That's all right. We'll wait until...
The amendment is up on the...
Yeah, Councillor Bartoli has moved the motion formally. Yeah. Somebody proposing an amendment. And Councillor Johnson, you seconded the motion? Yeah. And reserve the right to speak, I presume. So we're now into members speaking to the motion.
Chair, I have let the members know that there is going to be an amendment to the motion. It was Councillor Adi Neiman's, but he's not here, so I'll move it on his behalf, if that's all right.
That's fine, Councillor. I now invite members... Sorry.
So members can see on the screen the proposed amendment with text that's been added in green and text that's proposed to be deleted in red.
I can't see it at all.
There you go.
Scroll down. Okay.
Is somebody going to read it out?
Do you want to read out the inclusions? Read out the green and then the red. So the text to be added.
So the text that's going to be added, or wishes to be added, is on the 14th of November, the councillors of all wards were proud to lay wreaths with the council's crest emblazoned in their centre on the war memorials around the borough. Okay? Chair. This yellow?
The red.
The red one? Yeah. You want to change it, the colour, yeah? Is that better?
There we go.
Okay.
You have a second.
So the wording in blue, is what is proposed to be deleted, and the wording in green is what is proposed to be added.
Yeah. So, Chair, just on the amendment, it's an attempt, really. I fully appreciate Councillor Bartoli's time out ward councillor, so we'll focus on time out, but this is for all other community memorial events that happen around the borough. There's 4 civic events which happen, and there's 7 other events around the borough. This just includes all of them and not just time out. I fully appreciate that Councillor Bartoli and Councillor Johnson are time out councillors, so we'll think of the time out one first, but this is our attempt just to take the politics out of the motion first of all when mentioned reserves, but also just add that to the whole borough and not just time out that benefits from this. So it's all 7, so it's from the ones in wide open. There is 7 that I can read out if you wish, but take out the motion and provide funding for the 7 memorials right around the borough, the events right around the borough, and promotion and logistics as requested in the original motion, but not just for time out for the entire borough. And that's why I'll move the motion, Chair. Time out plus 6 is 7 in total, yeah.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Day.
Sarah Day.
I now invite members to speak to the amendment. Councillor McMullen.
As one of those community ones that is now added to this, I welcome that on behalf of the residents of Wheatslade.
Thank you. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. This is an attempt to get cross-party consensus, and I think what should be made very clear is that North Tyneside Council has never actually withdrawn funding for these parades, so this is stepping up to actually do something for the entire borough, which I think we should all be able to agree on.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brockbank.
I actually think Councillor Day was before me.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Nothing get me to shut up that quickly. No, the Conservative group will support this amendment. I think it's a sensible approach. I would just say it's very pleasing in a sense that our approach in terms of the cenotaph and memorials has been taken as a non-political issue. And I know the councillors for Time Out, certainly the two Conservative councillors were there, Time Out for the War Memorial cenotaph service. And we were very pleased actually by the clean-up that had been done. We absolutely think that there should be more investment in our war memorials. These aren't just add-ons or just things to be sorted out in November. They should be a perpetual mark of absolute respect to the glorious dead who have given us the right to sit here today and debate these things. And a November approach to cleaning things up is absolutely appalling. So what we would support this motion, but there needs to be a year-round approach to making sure that these memorials are absolutely pristine, because there's nothing less to be expected of those who've given their lives for us to be able to speak here today.
Councillor Mulvaney, did you have your hand up?
I'll certainly be voting for this amendment. In Valley Ward, we have 3 war memorials, and the councillors have supported the community all the way along. We've been doing it for around about 15 years now. And we are at the stage now where the residents actually cut the hedge round West Allotment, washed the memorial down itself, washed the path, and I've never seen it gleaming as much as what it was this year. So I think the residents who are involved need a big pat on the back as much as anything else, and I'm really pleased to actually support this.
Thank you, Councillor Mulvaney. Councillor Graham, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Just to come back to Councillor Brockbank, we do look after the war memorials all year round, Councillor Brockbank. If they do get an extra special look at for the remembrance services, which is only right and proper. We have to be mindful of the memorials and make sure that people don't damage them, because we have had some people cleaning them when they shouldn't have been, and have damaged some marble in some of the wards. There has been a call, I believe, from the other side to go out and clean the war memorials, and we would ask members not to ask people to go out and clean them, because there has been some damage. There has. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points. First, I wonder if we could have clarification as to which are the other 6 community events to which the amendment refers. I wholeheartedly support the motion, but I would like to know which 6 are included on that list. And secondly, with regard to keeping the memorials in a good condition, I would support what my colleague Councillor Brockbank has said. I don't think that they are kept in as good a condition as they could be, and I refer perhaps particularly to Ursden in my own ward, where twice a year is the commitment from the council, and I don't think twice a year for tidying up the area around a war memorial is sufficient. It's nowhere near enough, and I don't think it shows the level of respect and recognition which we all feel for the sacrifice which thousands and thousands of our fellow citizens have made in years gone by. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace. Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a point of clarification for Councillor Graham on where she said that members on this side had encouraged residents to clean up war memorials. That's not the case. We have run a petition asking for the council to clean up war memorials. I think she'll find that it was in fact the Labour councillors for Preston who actively encouraged residents to meet at war memorials to clean up, particularly the one on Hawkeys Lane. So just like her to retract that, and just on the point of the amendment, just like to ask Councillor Johnson if you can confirm that. Where it says council therefore asks the Manor Cabinet to assist with the funding, will that cover the funding for road closures entirely, or will it still be a case of residents needing to add to that? Thank you.
Thank you. I just think it's great there's been such a big upsurge in interest and attendance at our events in recent years, and I think local residents and community groups are a big part of that, as they should be. So I'm really pleased that the council have made this commitment, or will make it tonight, to help them. But I'd just like to place on record my thanks to all the local groups and individuals in Tynemouth for all they've been doing.
Councillor Westwater.
Yes, thank you. I certainly support the motion. Initially in the morning, we were at the memorial service at St Albans and Ersden and had a nice, easy but cold walk down to War Memorial at Ersden. In the afternoon, I've never seen so many people actually at the War Memorial in Whitley Bay. It was a fantastic turnout, and that sentiment obviously to the people feel and believe that the people who died for us should be respected and honoured. And I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, I've been advised that you need to provide the names of the additional memorials.
Yeah, they are Tynemouth, Seaton Burn, Shiremoor, West Allotment, Backweth and Cullercoats.
Thank you.
Of course, those are the 7 that currently exist around the borough, but if communities want to celebrate their war dead, then we always look and we'll work with any community. As Councillor Newman would have said if he had moved the motion, we always work with any community to recognise the war dead, and we look forward. So in terms of the, can I go my right to reply now, Chair, because no one else to speak? Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Just a couple of points really. In terms of Councillor Bones' question, yes, so there's £10,000 identified for that. This money will be fully more than enough to secure the road closures at all of those events that require them and in future. I do say we did do this as a non-political. I'm a bit disappointed there was some politics coming in from the other side during this motion. But this is something that we absolutely right to do. This borough goes far beyond what neighbouring boroughs do in terms of supporting our war dead. We have 4 civic services way beyond what other boroughs do. We've always supported other community services in the borough wherever we can. And as Councillor Rankin correctly said, it was not the council that ever funded the road closure in the first place. It was somebody elsewhere that withdrew funding, not the council. We're more than happy to continue talking to this and Councillor Newman, Councillor Day, and Councillor Bartoli, Johnson and Day all did write to the council regarding the Tynemouth Memorial before this, and that's why we got this group together to come up with this, and we think it's a great plan that will generally help even further support our war memorial. So pleased to see cross-party support, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Bartoli, would you like to respond?
No, just to say that I think the amendments go far and beyond what we'd expected, and I think it's a credit that we can now recognise all 7 of these events.
We'll now take a vote on the amendment. Those in favour, please raise your hands.
Again, that's unanimous, Chair. So the amendment is passed. You may want to ask if members want to go straight to the vote on the motion itself.
Would members like to go straight to the vote on the motion?
As amended.
As amended. Yeah, okay. All those in favour?
So again, that's unanimous, Chair. So the first motion as amended is passed.
I'll get the hang of this, yeah. Motion 2. Can I invite Councillor George Westwater to move the motion, please? Councillor Brockbank, do you wish to second the motion?
I do, and I reserve the right to speak.
I'll now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Johnson.
Again, I hope this one's taken in the spirit to move. I do have an amendment to the motion, which I've actually already submitted. And again, sorry about the colours. We'll make sure the colours are different next time.
Do you have a seconder for the amendment?
Formally reserve the right to speak.
I now invite members to speak to the amendment. Councillor Johnson.
Chair, can you give us a moment to read it first, please?
It's just up on the screen. Councillor Johnson, as the mover.
Councillor Johnson, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. I really do hope this is taken in the spirit to decide. On the 16th of September, all members were informed at a members' briefing of the Council's plans for a memorial for just this. I don't know if members have had the chance to see them, but there is plans in the lobby next to the front door of the Council, and they look absolutely stunning. I know SPG, when we see SPG Property Group, when we've seen them, they look absolutely stunning. They're absolutely fantastic. So this is just to say we're already well on the way to creating. I don't want to go. We don't want to step it back to create a party group to go out again, but that we will create a cross-party working group that once the consultation is back, which is currently ongoing on that, we bring it back to a cross-party working group for final consideration. Hopefully it's received in the spirit it's intended.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Would anyone like to speak to the amendment?
Who seconded the motion?
Sorry?
Do you have a seconder for the motion, for the amendment? Sorry. Councillor Samuel.
Yes, so orally.
Again, I hate to be so middle of the road. It's not usually my thing, but I entirely concur with Councillor Johnson. The Conservative Group will support this amendment. It's basically asking what we've asked for. I think it's sensible. What we're looking for is a lasting memorial. And in North Tyneside, outside the building, obviously we have a permanent memorial for the victims of the Holocaust. And I think the pandemic has been a huge national issue. So we're more than willing to work together. We will accept the amendment. And I thank Councillor Johnson for the spirit it was intended.
Thank you, Councillor Brockman. Councillor Martin? Rankin?
Thank you, Chair. Just from the point of view, some councillors might not have seen, so it would be worth looking at the end of the meeting. What's actually being created is 5 permanent memorials. They'll all be linked by virtue of the wagon ways, and there will be one in each quarter of the borough, and then a central memorial, which will actually be on the hill just outside Quadrant. So I would urge all councillors to actually go and have a look at it, because I think from the point of view of Cabinet, especially, we were actually very emotional when officers presented it to us. It is very, very thought-provoking. It's very tasteful, and I think it catches everything perfectly from the point of view of commemoration. So I would urge all councillors just to go out and have a look at the display afterwards. And obviously, if you have any questions about the meanings behind it, etc., please feel free to contact one of us.
Councillor Westwater?
Yeah, thank you. I can see the understanding and the sentiment behind having the different monuments or memorials in different areas of the borough. But take for example, you've got an elder lady who may live in my ward, whose husband died of COVID, who wants to go somewhere to pay respects that her husband has died. And fair enough, she's then got to either jump in her car and go to the memorial where it may be a nearest one, and then she's got to walk along the wagon way or through the park and then go and see the memorial. What I was trying to get at is that trees, the biodiversity, the council's tree planting strategy is all important. Blossoms or blossom at the time we've got to remember people. And I just feel as though, and by all means it's very honourable what you're trying to do as well, but the comments, that was one comment on your Facebook page by a resident who says that what your plans are, she says, I don't feel the options really reflect the sentiment or idea of reflecting on the pandemic. So by all means, have your public consultation, allow the ratepayers of this borough to have an input on what they want to do, but please don't disregard whether it may be some blossom trees in each individual ward in this borough, because of all people who've died in different wards, or have some blossom trees put in some cemeteries, but just have some trees as well. I don't see that's a difficult option to request. Thank you.
Councillor Westwater.
The Mayor.
Mayor Redfern.
Thank you, Chair. That's why it's going out to consultation, Councillor, to be quiet on it, because it has to belong to everyone in the borough. Everybody in the borough has to feel they've had their say, and it will be agreed as a consensus about what's the best thing for the borough. And it has to be something with quality as well. Thank you.
Are there any other hands up? No?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that members may not be aware, but we are taking part in the Great North Forest, and there's going to be a massive amount of tree planting throughout the borough. So if there are any areas within your own wards that you think may be suitable, do let me know, and we'll look at those and see if they are suitable for those trees. But there will be trees at these memorials as well. So just to make you aware that that will happen. Thank you, Councillor Westwater.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
So,
no one else
wants to speak? You go to the vote on the amendment.
Yep. We'll now go to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
Again, that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you.
Amended.
Would you like to go straight to the vote on the motion as amended?
Okay, so those in favour? Right,
Thank you. We now move to motion 3. Can I invite Councillor McIntyre to move the motion, please?
Yes, Chair, I move this motion.
Councillor Westwater?
Yeah, I'll second.
Wish to second this motion?
I was ready to speak, thank you.
I'll now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Graham?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to spoil the party because I'm going to oppose this motion. North Tyneside Council has already invested more than 3.7 million in the revamp of the Northern Prom area as part of its ambition for North Tyneside regeneration strategy. And the latest phase saw a further 1 million invested in the successful completion of works at and around the Rendezvous Cafe. Each stage of the improvements has involved engagement and appropriate technical assessments as to use and structural issues involving the prom. And the next phase of investment will see a further 1 million invested, with work already on site and scheduled to be concluded in the spring of next year. And the proposal is to retain, to clean and replace any broken flagstones, all of which will breathe a new lease of life into this section of the promenade. These paving flagstones have been a much loved and photographed feature of the promenade for many years and are considered to be a heritage asset, linking the promenade with its past. Further to this, Beamish Museum have requested that any of the Battenberg paving slabs not utilised in the works be gifted to them, which has also been agreed. And on the climate change agenda, the flagstones we are retaining covers an area of over 2,000 square metres. In terms of weight, this amounts to over 350 tonnes of material. If we were to dispose of the flagstones, even in an environmentally responsible way by means of recycling, the effect would be incurring a cost of waste treatment in excess of £20,000 and generate at least 360 tonnes of carbon. Furthermore, replacing paving with tarmac would generate even more carbon emissions. This would come from the aggregate and bitumen included within the mix. And a further dig down will be required to create a firmer foundation than is required for flagstones. And this would mean more material would be needed over and above the tarmac on the surface. Again, this generates carbon emissions. As Cabinet Member for the Environment with overall responsibility for the carbon net zero ambition for the borough, of 2030 when the government is 2050. I'm delighted we are responsibly choosing to reuse the paving on this project. It is the right thing to do. To do so meets within the circular economy for waste, which is included within the Conservative government's own waste strategy. This promotes reuse as the go-to option for material before thinking about recycling and disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor McIntyre?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as we said in our motion to Council, our lovely coastline is the jewel in North Tynesyde's crown, which is why we and the residents who we've spoken to are very saddened to learn that the regeneration work along the Northern Promenade is not going to be of the same standard as the rest. Residents and visitors have commented that the new surface along the prom looks good and enhances the area and has rejuvenated the much used and loved promenade. So to not to continue this improvement and to use the old worn paving slabs, multicoloured but faded, no matter how much they've been cleaned, it's not only a shame but detrimental to the area as a whole. The Northern Promenade may be in St Mary's ward, but it's not for the sole use of St Mary's residents, far from it. Residents from all our coastal wards come along for their daily exercise and to visit the lighthouse. Residents from other parts of the borough, rightly so, see the beaches and seafront as their coastline to enjoy, and visitors from all parts of the UK come to this area as tourists, and our wonderful sandy beaches and coastline are a big attraction. We've been told that there will be new seating, handrails, bins and new shelters, all very welcome and will be matching the rest of the promenade. This should be a once-in-a-lifetime job of regeneration, something we need to get right first time for both our residents and visitors. The Mayor claims she wants to retain local heritage by reusing the Battenberg-style paving stones. If that was totally true, why did the council not keep some of them for the entire Northern Promenade? Heritage is one thing, but nothing lasts forever, and these worn-out paving stones have had their day. The residents we have spoken to want continuity and a joined-up appearance, and this can only be done by extending the new surface the entire length of the Northern Promenade. We all appreciate that large parts of the Whitley Bay seafront regeneration has been paid for by government grants and external funding, but when it comes to spending local residents' council tax money on Whitley Bay, the Mayor refuses to do so, which is why we are having regeneration on the cheap. Well, there is an old naval saying, very much still used today, don't spoil the ship for a ha'porth of tar. So let's not spoil the regeneration of Whitley Bay for the same. But here's the most important point. On both sides of this political chamber, we like to put out leaflets decrying the actions of our opponents, what they have done or not done, something which we disagree with. But I and my ward colleagues love Whitley Bay, with this beautiful long coastline stretching to Tynemouth, and know that our residents do too. It would give us no pleasure at all if this motion fails and we have to inform them that the Northern Promenade is going to be second-rate. I urge Council to vote for this notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. I think I absolutely understand what my colleague Councillor Graham said and absolutely support Councillor Graham wholeheartedly. We know a thing or two about regeneration on this side. We've won national awards for it, you know. The Mayor is elected on 3 successive terms because on the back of not just regeneration at the coast, but regeneration Wallsend, Forest Hall and continue. We're starting a regeneration of North Shields now. So we won't take any lessons on regeneration from a party who left the dome in wrack and ruins when they were in power. Just on why it wasn't possible to retain this style of paving for the rest of the site. It was not possible to retain a style of paving, apart from the previous raise, due to the requirement to reset the levels immediately in front and adjacent to the Rendezvous Cafe. This allowed the provision of level access to all, removing the existing stairs and providing a gentle gradient to the main entrance to the cafe, meeting DDA requirements. So that's why we couldn't do this for the rest of the Northern Prom, but we absolutely would have looked to retain this fantastic heritage asset. As Councillor Graham said, Bemis regime would love to see any left-off flagstones because they are an absolutely integral part of our heritage and history in the north east of England. So we will absolutely not, we will not be supporting this motion Chair, and we do urge members not to as well.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly will be supporting this motion. I did actually inquire of the Chief Finance Officer how much this would lay the council open to liability, and I was told 0.35 million if it was to be extended all the way through. Quite frankly, I love Beamish, it's great, but we are not councillors for Beamish. I couldn't really care what they want. What I care about is what residents need and expect. There needs to be consistency there. There absolutely needs to be consistency. 0.35 million, when you've got a £2.5 million surplus you weren't expecting, is a drop in the ocean, and quite frankly, it is an absolutely disgraceful abrogation of your responsibility to the coastal wards.
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. The loving's definitely over, isn't it? So, you're talking about regeneration, but of course this is the party opposite who actually campaigned to keep the cafe. Do you remember the old cafe which wasn't paying its rent? So you remember you actually ran a campaign to try and keep the cafe, which is the entrance to the promenade now, and has obviously won awards for what's been done there. You also campaigned to keep the balustrades further up. In fact, I think even set up, they even had their own Facebook page, from memory. So I do think that it's a bit strange that you will pick the heritage assets that you want to keep and set up Facebook pages, and then when you want to run a campaign before local elections, you'll then pick heritage assets that you want to get rid of. Thank you.
Councillor Westwater.
Thank you. Just some clarification, if I may, please. Can someone please answer why it took the 3 ward councillors to ask for a meeting with officers to find out what was actually happening with the Northern Promenade regeneration? No information came forward forthright from anyone in this council to let us know what was happening. I was answerable to my residents what was actually taking place. Nobody told me, and we then had to send an email to request a meeting to find out what's happening.
Councillor Westwater, I've been told that's outside the scope of the motion.
Well, I'll send the mayor an email to ask.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I thought I might speak to this because it caught my eye, as I'm very familiar with this part of the Northern Promenade, as it forms my running surface every Saturday morning when I'm doing the park run, although obviously not at the moment while the work's going on. But also it caught my eye because, and when I spoke to the Cabinet Member for the Environment about it and found out some of the significant issues relating to the sustainability agenda, I thought it just spoke to me of how rapidly we as a council are beginning to respond to the urgency of the climate challenge. Actually, I don't think we might have made a decision like this just a few short years ago. And I was really pleased actually that we were applying more stringent sustainability criteria now to our regeneration efforts. And in that sense, the phrase that caught my eye is that the Northern Promenade is not going to be to the same standard. And I think it's great that actually a higher standard of sustainability is going to be applied through the reuse of these materials. And I hope it is going to polish up really well, and it's going to look really great, and it's going to have echoes of the past, but it's going to continue the completion of the promenade from one end to the other. So I'm sorry I can't accept the motion in the form it's in.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very pleased to support this motion. Along with my St Mary's Ward councillors, we've been very disappointed that regeneration of this section of the promenade has taken so long. We have on several occasions pressed for progress. When the master plan was published several years ago, showing regeneration of the promenade, no difference was shown between the section south of the rendezvous and the section north of the rendezvous, which we're discussing tonight. There was no indication that they were going to be treated in a very different manner, and residents are extremely disappointed at this current decision. Pains have clearly been taken to make sure the shelters, the seating, the handrails, the bins do match that on the southern section, and I think that's to be welcomed. It's clear that care has been taken, and therefore it's even more surprising that the decision has been made not to match the surface. It's going to look, frankly, like a hodgepodge. I noticed the reference to this heritage Battenberg paving. No residents have ever expressed joy or delight in this so-called heritage paving. I don't think it's ever been a matter of glee. people are now disappointed that they're going to be left with it. It definitely will be second rate. And whilst it's referred to as heritage and old, as I'm very proud of our history in this borough and indeed our country, but nowhere does it say that everything that's old should necessarily be kept. And I think this is a fine example of where these paving slabs should not be retained. I note the point with regard to recycling, etc. Well, we know that Beamish has expressed an interest in having those paving slabs, and I think that would be an ideal use for them. Beamish do great work in portraying the history of our region. They are establishing a 1950s town in the same way as they have a 1920s one. That would be a very, very good use for them, so they would not be wasted. They would go there. And indeed, we should have the proper surface to match the whole length of the prom, a benefit to our residents and to our visitors, and to be far more a source of pride to this borough than the hodgepodge which we're now going to have, it appears. Thank you.
Mr. Wallace. Councillor O'Shea.
Thank you, Chair. I can speak with some authority around this because looking around the chamber, I think I'm the only resident from St Mary's Ward, and I do look at this work ongoing. It's working really well. I was there this morning, the demolishing things, and many of the things which have been said in the original motion by the Conservatives are indeed true. The Northern Prom is excellent. That's courtesy of the Mayor who gave this commitment about a year ago now. So thanks to the Mayor, we've got what we have. But I must admit I'm persuaded by the arguments put forward by Councillor Graham around the need for a bit of sustainability in the construction and the use of the Battenberg type paving stones. I'm pleased that the railings and the seating arrangements are going to be the same as the southern bit of the Northern Prom. So on balance, I'm in favour of doing something with it, and I know it's been a long time coming. We are there, the work is ongoing, and I think we should continue as planned with the Battenberg style and recycle where we can all of the pavements. So I won't be supporting this resolution. I'll be supporting those people who are not in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Shea. Mayor Redfern.
Thank you, Chair. I think if you ask the residents of Whitley Bay and Monk Seaton North and even St Mary's how pleased they are with what's happened at the coast, to be quite honest. They're extremely proud now of living there. At one time, I met some residents who were just almost crying on my shoulder, saying they were so embarrassed when their relatives came to visit them and how proud they were now, to be quite honest. And there has been a great deal of money spent at Whitley Bay by this council and the government too. We actually praise the government, how they give us their support. But we don't do anything hodgepodge in this borough. Not this administration don't do anything hodgepodge. We do things at a very, very high standard. And I actually have emails from residents who are telling me they're delighted we're keeping the Battenberg slabs along the thing. Isn't it good to keep something of the past, a feeling the past as well as blended in with the future? And if you read any of the notes from the past of how we're going to attempt that promenade, it was going to be done in 3 phases. And that's exactly what we've done. This is the last phase. And the next phase will probably look at will be St Mary's at the island there. So don't tell me people in the borough aren't happy with what they've got down there. They're absolutely delighted. Why has 60-odd businesses moved into that area? It has attracted a lot of people. We'll have many, many visitors come there. So to suggest that this administration would give hodgepodge to anybody in the borough, we certainly wouldn't. And I'm extremely proud of what we're doing down there, and I think my pals are too, my colleagues are too. And to sit there and say that we don't spend any money, it's all government money. Excuse me, ask some of my colleagues from North Tyneside constituency where some of the money has been spent. They know. Thank you very much indeed. And I think we're all very proud of what's happened in Whitley Bay. Thank you. And I would support this wholeheartedly.
You support it? Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McIntyre, would you like to respond?
Just like to say, does that mean the Mayor's going to support the motion? You've just said you support
Point of
it.
order.
I'm very happy that you will do so.
Point of order, Chair. I apologise. Councillor McIntyre, you know exactly what I was referring to. So don't actually be too clever. It doesn't become you.
I'm not being too clever. I'm not being too clever. I'm just listening to what's been said. And you said you support the motion.
Councillor McIntyre, would you like to continue with your response, please?
Yeah, I just want to repeat that what I've just said before is that I won't take any pleasure at all in telling the residents of St Mary's Ward that this motion has been rejected, and we have done a lot of consultation about this, and I know the residents will not be that happy that the same standard of work is not going to be carried right along to the lighthouse. Excuse my voice. So I'm supporting the motion. Thank you.
Those in favour of the motion?
We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? And
nine, Chair.
And those against?
I have 42, Chair. So the motion is defeated.
And we will now move to motion 4. Can I invite Councillor Bones to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. During the budget setting process, the Mayor and Cabinet voted for an eye-watering 4.99% council tax hike, raising around £5 million for the council's budget. Every year, in fact, the Labour group opposite have voted to hike taxes for residents, citing budget cuts as the reason to do so. If budgets are so tight, why, when the council discovered a £2.5 million underspend, was the first instinct not to divert it into frontline services like roads or potholes, or even to hand it back to residents as a council tax rebate for an increase that wasn't needed? Instead, the Labour Party opposite have had their con exposed. Hike taxes blaming the government, then don't spend the money and squirrel it away into reserves, hoping that residents don't notice that they've been charged extra for a service that they haven't received. People will rightly ask, where has the money gone? It's gone, amongst other things, into a new education change reserve, which our Section 151 officer didn't feel was necessary when the budget was set in February, but now there's extra money around.
Councillor Bones, it's not appropriate to attack officers. Your comments must be addressed to politicians only, Chair. Okay.
Which our Cabinet Member for Finance didn't feel was necessary when the budget was set, but there's now extra money around and it's apparently vital for the financial stability of the council. Roads and pavements across North Tyneside are crumbling. This year, the government has given North Tyneside an additional £1.8 million for repairs. The council, however, has only provided an extra £195,000. £2.5 million could dramatically improve roads and pavements in North Tyneside, making them safer for residents and motorists. An underspend should be seen as usable funds for residents' priorities, not a lump sum to put in the bank never to be seen again. After all, none of this money belongs to us. Not the Mayor, not the Cabinet, it belongs to residents. I urge all members to think about their residents, what their priorities are, and support this motion so that we can give our residents the Christmas present they deserve and finally fix our crumbling roads and pavements. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brockbank, do you wish to second this motion?
I do second. I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I'll now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Graham.
My turn again. I'm sorry, colleagues. The outturn report for 2021 was presented to the Cabinet on the 15th of July 2021, and the report set out the variations in the outturn position and a £2.5 million surplus. And the surplus arose through a range of actions taken by services to bring their budgets in on balance, and a surplus on interest and minimum revenue provision as a result of both low interest rates and some delays on the delivery of the investment plan with the pandemic. Actions are already in progress in respect of these reserves. Reallocation at this stage would require Cabinet to consider further action needed to realign other resources to fund the actions and manage the risks identified. The Section 151 officers reviews the authority's reserves and balances position regularly, having to regard to the here and now and to the future. Members will be aware that many of the authority's reserves are ring-fenced for specific use, leaving the strategic reserve and the change reserve to mitigate unfunded financial risks. These remain relatively low-levelled reserves at around 19 million, less the 6 million deficit we have for COVID at the present in a pressure. And for a £500 million plus turnover organisation, that is what we are. That is a certain not excessive level of reserve. The Section 151 officer has said many times before, we've been through this many times before, and I can bring her in again so there can be no doubt in members' minds. This is rainy day money in case of a Thunder Thursday or in case of a pandemic. It is prudent. Other funds are specifically earmarked for projects, and it is disingenuous to tell our residents we have huge levels of reserves. Reserves is a legal accounting term that must be used, but we all know what it means in reality. Please take this on board, as some members are walking a very fine line in truth to our residents. In terms of roads and pavements investment, it is set out in our Highways Asset Management Plan, the HAMP, and is included for delivery in both revenue and capital budget. The annual HAMP information report will be presented to Cabinet on Monday and will be shared with all ward councillors shortly afterwards. The report will show, and I'll share that with you, that our roads and pavements are currently in a good state of repair. With all performance targets being met, you can laugh, Councillor Bones, but it's true. We have evidence to show that. There has been ongoing improvement in the condition of pavements, and the highways repairs backlog is under control. This has been made achievable by the authority investing an additional £2 billion of capital funding every year since 2014-2015. This is always a struggle, as this is against competing demands to help real people. And the inequalities agenda is high on the Mayor and this Council's priorities, especially in times of great need, which we are in at the present. The investment plan contains a commitment to continue with the annual additional £2 million investment. The government's recent budget statement pledged additional highway maintenance funding for England, but we are still waiting for an announcement as to what funding may be allocated to North Tyneside. So if you can put a word in, that would be very helpful. May I also remind them, members opposite, that they refused to vote to ask the government for additional funding for roads and pavements for this borough. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Graham, does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Brockbank.
Far be it from me saying I'm flabbergasted, but I am. I know Councillor likes to quote from the dictionary, so from the Oxford English Dictionary, can I tell you what surplus means? An amount that is extra and more than you need. And more than you can squirrel away, hide, take from residents and not be accountable for, need. And I think it's when Councillor Graham talks about a fine line, I think she needs to re-examine her definition of what truth looks like. We are absolutely clear that a surplus not expected of £2.5 million has been found by officers, thankfully so. I was told by the 151 officer today that the insurance reserve stands currently at 8.5 million. The change reserve stands at 3.6 million, and these 2.5 million is extra above and beyond what was expected. So let's be clear about that. You talk about rainy day funding as well. Well, as the only Monk and South councillor in the chamber tonight, let me tell you, Thunder Thursday, or whatever you want to call it, was no fun for us either, and you still vote for houses on that development, so we'll take no lessons from you. We are asking Cabinet to consider very carefully this additional money that we were not expecting. And when you say that our roads are fantastically well looked after and our pavements are and all the rest of it, I don't know where you live, it clearly must be in your ward an area paved with gold, because among Seaton South, nearly 92% of my inquiries, which actually if you combine your Labour colleagues' inquiries together, there's still 100 behind me, are about paving stones pavements and roads. So this £2.5 million, not overspend, underspend, extra money, taxpayers' money, North Tyneside residents' money, should not be hidden away in reserves that nobody understands, and actually should be spent because it's not your money, the mayor's money, my money, it is residents' money. And if you can't support this, you should all be ashamed of yourself, and I hope you can go back to your residents and tell them where that money's been squirreled away.
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be supporting the motion. I think it's safe to say that we all want to see good roads and pavements, which is why this administration promised in July to provide an extra £2 million of funding a year, £8 million over the 4 years of Mayor Redford's term, something which the Conservatives opposite voted against. That's a matter of fact. This extra funding is added to the grant provided by central government, which, as the council noted in July, the core funding had been cut by 10%. Well, this motion is misleading as to the strength of the council's finances and demonstrates a lack of understanding of the basics of managing budgets. It is true to say that last financial year there was a surplus of £2.5 million, but the outturned report also makes clear that this surplus was not created by any in-year departmental savings, but by one major item, which was that of loan interest savings. Because of the pandemic, the council underborrowed against the budget agreed in February 2020, when the idea of a global pandemic was something of a dystopian nightmare. Council officers used their skills and experience to manage our external debt to such a degree that over £2.5 million was saved in interest payments. They should be applauded for that, not attacked in this chamber. But the report also makes clear the precarious nature of our finances due to the pandemic. Major revenue lines such as fees and charges were effectively switched off overnight by lockdowns and have not recovered. Without these interest savings, there would have been a deficit last year. It must be remembered that the government compensated us for just 70% of the fees and charges that were lost in income during the lockdowns. The Conservatives have councillors who sit on the Finance Subcommittee. They know we have a current in-year deficit of £6 million, mainly caused by COVID pressures. So I'll ask the party opposite, what is £2.5 million minus £6 million? Because that is the net deficit position across the 2 years. If they are serious about this issue, then instead of grandstanding with such motions, only telling residents a selective part of the story, they should use the opportunity of the up-and-coming budget process to build in additional spend to their own proposals. Given the vast majority of road and pavement work is done in spring and summer, then no one will be disadvantaged by you doing this. They can also then show, within the framework of the 4-year medium-term financial plan, how they can balance the competing priorities with the need to financially underpin the school system with £1 million, which is what we have done, fund work across the council's operating estate, which was delayed because of COVID, which needs to be done, and also find the funds required and needed to realign our procurement activities, which needs to be done. Because the outturn report explains that this is what the surplus funds are required for, and that requirement does not change by them looking to allocate it somewhere else. So we have no choice. And they have no choice, because it means they'll just have to put it into next year's budget anyway. Actions have already commenced in respect of these matters, and if we do not provide for them now, then their funding requirements will need to be built into next year's budget, and you'll need to build it into your own budget proposals. I will remind Council, we have seen the 4-year financial plan, which shows significant future reserve usage, and with the worst case scenario taking us below our minimum balance requirements, we must consider all additional spending in that context, and I suggest that you read your reports. I would say, however, imagine that we had adopted the Conservative budget proposal in February of last year. As well as grappling with the current projected 4-year deficit, which is in the medium-term financial plan of over £20 million, we would also now be having to find a further £17 million worth of savings, a potentially catastrophic black hole in our future budgets that the Conservatives would have created without seemingly even knowing that it's there. And that will always be the case when their spending and taxation decisions are made with social media campaigns and leaflets in mind, rather than the authority's financial stability and reputation. Chair, I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Johnson.
Nice to follow that, Chair, isn't it? The party opposite love to pay lip service on roads and pavements. But as Councillor Rankin and Councillor Graham have said, they have repeatedly in this chamber refused to ask for government for any more money. The reason that roads and pavements are so far behind, and it's since 2010 roads and pavements fell behind, I wonder what changed in 2010. Since 2010, roads and pavements fell behind because of government cuts. Last year alone, 30% of the LTP budget was cut to this council. That's your government directly cutting budgets from roads and pavements. Not to mention the £127 million that's been cut from this council over the previous 10 years. I always liked to pay lip service to roads and pavements, but they've got no actual plans of how to improve them. Whereas we, since Norma Redfern has been the mayor, have put over the last 5 years, have put an additional £2 million each of these years, and will continue for the rest of the mayoral term. We'll always try and tackle the roads and pavements backlog, and we have one of the lowest backlogs in the region, lower than many Conservative councils, because they mustn't have a plan on how to secure the backlog either. Last year in this chamber, I asked Councillor Brockbank if he was financially incompetent or if he was misleading the residents. As he just said, he doesn't understand reserves. I think I've got my answer on that one, Chair.
Councillor Johnson.
Right.
Councillor Arkley.
Yes, Chair. It's been interesting listening to everybody having their say about roads and pavements. But I will say to all of you, some years ago, when I was the elected mayor, we did a total cover of what was required. And I think the existing mayor now she'll confirm, I think 60 or 70 million, whatever, it was a huge number. I actually went on to put 2 million each year into the budget. It's a great opportunity to move forward. We have, all of us in here, we receive letters, complaints, people, falling over. The insurance that this council runs must be huge. There's been major issues and have been for years. I think what we do need to stop doing is, going on about this, but the fact is you've got £2.5 million. I will be supporting Councillor Bones's notice of motion. But I do feel that you need to look round. I won't go any further into the past. I think we've moved forward. What I do want is to see many more roads, many more paths to be, cleared and repaired. And if we don't, it's a failure on all of us, whichever way you want to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arkley. Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly come back on a point made by Councillor Graham that her claim that the roads and pavements were in a good condition, which obviously led to some laughter from this side. And if I look at my own ward profile for Tynemouth, which is published on the North Tyneside Council website, the number one area that needs improvement for Tynemouth alone is roads and pavements, with 55% of the residents saying that they need improving. The next nearest is 35% with clean streets. So I think regardless of how this money is funded, where it's coming from, I think it's no doubt the number one issue facing our residents across the whole borough. And I think it is, as Councillor Arkley rightly says, I think it is an embarrassment to all of us that we're in this position.
Councillor Bartoli. Councillor Bones, would you get? Oh, beg your pardon. Mayor Redfern.
Thank you. I think we'd all agree there's a great need for roads and pavements. And if you go around the borough, there's work going on in most wards for roads and pavements. However, you have to realise that we have been going through a very, very difficult time. Our adult social care and our children's social care is under tremendous, tremendous pressure. And I think you would be inhumane if you didn't think that the first priority for us was to look after our young children, the vulnerable and the elderly. So that's the choice we've had to make. And we are inundated now by parents for assessments of special needs for their children, and the pressures are great. So all I can tell you, I agree with you, roads and pavements, but for my part, the people must come first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Councillor Bones, would you like to exercise your right to reply?
Thank you, Chair. I'm amazed by the response opposite. I mean, Councillor Graham barely said with a straight face that the roads and pavements in North Tyneside were in a good condition, and then has been directly contradicted by Councillor Johnson and the directly elected mayor, who have agreed that they are behind. I think that the importance of reserves is a good point to make, Councillor, but the issue is that this was money that wasn't in reserves until your cabinet added them to reserves earlier in the year, and this is money that was in the budget that wasn't spent, and as Councillor Rankin said, was allocated to reserves from that point, and that's the point that we're making. Sorry.
You don't understand reserves. The money is being spent over the 4-year financial plan. You just don't understand it.
Excuse me, Chairman. Councillor Bones is exercising his right of reply.
Please, everybody, I'm not having back chat across the chamber. Councillor Bones, continue.
Thank you, Chair. So I think the point that we're making is that this money wasn't in reserves, is now being added to reserves when it could have been put in frontline services. And our motion is asking for that money to instead be put into repairing roads and pavements across North Tyneside, which is clearly what the residents want, what Mayor Redfern said the residents want, what Councillor Johnson said the residents want, and apparently the roads in Whitley Bay are fine, so we'll just take the money for the other 19 wards and put it to a vote. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bones, I made the point. I'm sorry.
Chair, can we have a named vote on this, please?
We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour of the motion? Oh.
Sorry, I'll read them out.
Okay.
So. Yeah. Sorry. Councillor Linda Arkley, for or against the motion? Councillor Ken Barry. Councillor Lewis Bartoli.
For.
Councillor Gary Bell.
Against.
Councillor Linda Bell.
Yes.
Councillor Liam Bones. Councillor Trish Brady.
Against.
Councillor Sean Brockbank. Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Carol Burdis. Councillor Joanne Cassidy. Councillor Karen Clark.
Against.
Councillor Debbie Cox.
Against.
Councillor Steve Cox. Councillor Julie Cruddas. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Linda Dark. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor Peter Early.
Against.
Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Muriel Green.
Against.
Councillor Tracy Holloway. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor John Hunter. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Hannah Johnson. Sorry? Thank you. Councillor Christopher Johnson. Councillor Joe Kerwin.
Against.
Councillor Frank Lott.
Against.
Councillor Wendy Lott. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Maureen Madden. Councillor Pamela McIntyre. Councillor Anthony McMullen.
Against.
Councillor Janice Mole. We have apologies. Councillor Jim Montague.
Against.
Councillor Thomas Mullenna. Councillor Pat Oliver.
Against.
Councillor Andy Newman. Councillor John O'Shea. Councillor Stephen Phillips. Councillor Bruce Pickard. Councillor Martin Rankin. Elected Mayor Norma Redfern. Councillor Paul Richardson. Councillor Willie Samuel. Councillor Jane Shaw. Councillor Matthew Thurloway. Councillor Joan Walker. Councillor Judith Wallace. Councillor George Westwater. And Councillor Matt Wilson. Give me a moment, Chair. So we have 43 votes against and 9 in favour, so the motion is defeated, Chair.
We now move to motion 5. Can I invite Councillor Surloway to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. The two parties in this chamber disagree on a lot of issues, although tonight has been a mixed bag. But I hope we can all agree that in-work poverty is unfair. It can't be fair that people who do the right thing and work hard aren't able to make a decent living. People who work to provide for themselves and their families shouldn't be in this situation. In this country, the majority of households living in poverty have at least one person in work. Despite record-breaking levels of employment, the number of people living in poverty continues to increase. This is a problem in every single ward in this borough. We will all know people who work long hours but struggle to pay bills at the end of the month. Last year we clapped for key workers. Now is our opportunity to do something substantial for them and other hard-working people. The concept of the working poor should be an idea confined to history. We should be able to put aside our party politics and work together to resolve this problem.
I do, thank you, Chair. I'd like to say I fully support this motion and I totally agree that in-work poverty is unfair and unjust. Traditionally, there's been an association between entering employment and alleviation of poverty. Unfortunately, due to the increased cost of living and cuts to income and pay levels, this is no longer the case. More and more working people are struggling to make ends meet and suffering the devastating negative impact this has on people's health and well-being. This includes working people with children, and there has been a significant increase in the number of children living in low-income working families. Between 2016 and 2020, for example, there was an increase of 6% in North Tyneside compared to a 2.9% increase in England. We know this figure is likely to have increased further with the impact of COVID-19. Whilst I'm very proud to be part of a council that does actually prioritise support to people experiencing poverty, including in-work poverty, North Tyneside Council do currently provide a range of initiatives and support, which includes our Innovative Poverty Intervention Fund, which of course has provided much needed support to those most in need, including food vouchers during school holidays, support to families for school uniforms, poverty-proofing the school day, holiday activities, etc. There's also a very wide range of other additional support. Also, the new Joint Health and Wellbeing Board strategy to tackle inequalities was approved by the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 11th of November. This includes a focus on ensuring a healthy standard of living for all, including addressing the issue of in-work poverty. But as the issue of in-work poverty does continue to increase, and in the absence of national legislation, such as introducing a real living wage, then local authorities do need to approach government and request further resources and funding to tackle this specific issue. I hope everyone in the chamber will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I now invite members to speak to the motion. Nobody? Really? Okay.
Councillor Thurlow, to sum up.
Yes, would you like to exercise your right?
Chair, I'm happy to go straight to the vote.
Okay. We'll now go straight to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion?
So that's 43, Chair.
And those against? We now move on to motion 6. Can I invite Councillor Samuel to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. You may have missed it because most people did, but in July this year, the government slipped out a consultation document. This document proposed that free prescriptions for those over the age of 60 but below state pension age should be abolished in England. Given it was slipped out during the middle of the pandemic, when most public discussion was around the relaxation of restrictions, it attracted very little media attention. But it's a recognised fact that when people get older, many tend to require more medication. Many people find themselves taking several different types of prescribed medications, and the cost in terms of individual charges being quite high. As Age UK has said, this is a bitter pill to swallow for millions in this age group, especially if their income is modest, but takes them just above the benefit line. It also penalises those who need multiple medicines because they are managing several serious long-term health conditions like hypertension or heart disease. Our biggest worry about this proposal is its potential impact on people's health, especially if the money is tight. We are deeply concerned that they may be reluctant to act on symptoms, seek medical advice or get a diagnosis for fear that they will be unable to afford long-term symptom relieving or even in some cases life-saving medication. The response from the government is that these people can buy a certificate to cut these costs at about £108 per year. Many of us could probably afford that. Many, however, close living to the breadline find this a very significantly high amount of money to try and find. It is hard not to conclude that this is yet another stealth tax on those that are least able to afford it and in many cases are in very poor health. Moreover, England is the only part of the UK which has any form of prescription charges. It is unique in seeking to extend prescription charges which have been abolished everywhere else. Probably no coincidence that England is under a Conservative government and other parts of the UK are not. The extension of charging will hit some of the poorest people in our borough the hardest, and for that reason this council should unanimously express its opposition.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Day, would you like to second this motion? Thank you. I'll now invite members to speak to the motion.
Councillor Brockbank, Chair.
Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you, Chair. Since its inception of the NHS, the Conservatives have run the NHS of its 44 of its 71 years. There's been a year-on-year increase, and I defy anybody who's politically or economically literate on that side of the chamber to defy me on this. Year-on-year increase, billions upon billions. I would just like to say as well that the Conservatives do take exceptionally seriously the commitment to NHS funding, and certainly there's no evidential basis to suggest otherwise. I would just say to Councillor Samuels is the key word in his motion is proposal. It's out for consultation. Playing politics and fear with people who need prescriptions is absolutely shameful. This is out for proposal. It is a consultation. There will be a wide range of views taken. And on this side, let me make it abundantly clear, we have delivered extra funding year on year, more than Labour ever has done, even though Tony Blair privatised hospital building and all the rest of it. It is on this side that recognises the real heart of the NHS, service at the point of delivery, paid for by national insurance contributions. Will take no lessons from the fearmongers on that side of the chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Brockbank, please don't point at other members in the chamber. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I fully support this motion. I think as poorer people tend to suffer more ill health, the impact of something like this would have a devastating effect on those already in need and on low incomes. So I hope everyone's going to support this motion and support our residents in North Tyneside. Thank you.
Clark. Councillor Johnson. Councillor, go first. When you're putting your hand up, will you please make it evident that you're putting your hand up?
I'll do my best. I just want to say that the other side always tend to think why, I don't know, that people over the age of 60 are on the poverty line. Not necessarily. At the moment, you've got people who are over the age of 60 who could be a millionaire and claim free prescriptions. That doesn't seem to be quite fair. But anyway, if you are struggling to pay for your prescriptions, there is still a form called a prescription exemption charge form, the FP92A. And as this is consultation period, as my colleague said, it hasn't been said that this is going to disappear. So this form is for people who are finding it difficult to pay for prescriptions and to apply for help.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brockbank is right in technical terms that there's been a year-on-year increase, but the reality is, since the NHS was established, the average year-on increase in funding is 3.7%. You know, Councillor Brockbank rightly said the Conservative Party have run the NHS for most of this time. He's absolutely wrong to suggest the Labour Party didn't put record levels of funding into the National Health Service. He knows he's wrong, and the smirk on his face is wrong. However, in the last 10 years, the government's year-on-year increase has been about 1.4%, much lower than the average of the history of the NHS. It's a year-on-year rise, but it's a much lower investment into the National Health Service as it has been. It's the year-on-year rise by 1.4%, but it's lower than the 3.7% average, which is why the National Health Service is in the situation it is in at the moment, because the Conservatives are failing to fund it correctly.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be clear from our side, as this is a consultation which has now closed but is awaiting government response, it is a free vote from our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Arkley.
I'd just like to ask the legal officer, as this is a consultation, but actually reading the notice of motion, it's trying to say that government proposals, well, that's not the same. I ask why that was this notice of motion was accepted.
Point of order, it's a policy proposal which was then went into a consultation. So it's a proposal.
Point of order, it says proposal, not consultation.
You build a set of policy proposals and then you can consult on those.
Then get your wording right in your motion.
Ultimately, Chair,
I would like to object to the way I've just been spoken to there.
Ultimately, Chair, I think we're into a degree of semantics as to what is a consultation and what is a proposal. They tend to flow together. I would suggest that you consult upon a proposal. So if the government has a proposal, then the motion relates to the proposal. The fact that proposal is then consulted upon doesn't negate the fact that there is a proposal.
You can't have a second bite at the cherry, Councillor Day. Is this something different? Okay.
Thank you. To go back to the debate, I would just like to say that I think the thing that is shameful is that the government's own impact assessment on this has found that it will impact people on the lowest wages the most. So this is an equality issue, and that is what is shameful.
Thank you, Chair. There's only one problem I've got with the motion, is that we're asking the mayor to write to the Prime Minister. And after his performance at the Port of Tyne the other day, should we not be sending it to somebody else with more capable?
I will now ask Councillor Samuel for his right to reply.
Thank you,
I'm really sorry, Councillor Hunter, you're going to have to wave it at me. What would you like to say?
Just like I say, I'm fully in favour. As somebody who takes 17 tablets a day just to stay alive, I totally agree with this.
Thank you. Councillor Samuels?
Thank you very much. Not very much to reply to, really, because the debate didn't seem to actually be about the free prescriptions very much, certainly from Councillor Brockbank's point of view. And never mind, the consultation period is, as I said in the original motion, the proposals came out on the 1st of April. They were government proposals. They asked for views. That's how consultation works. That's how it is. The consultation period is over. We now will wait what the government has decided to do. And this is exactly the point, to make the point before the final decision comes out, that that we're not in favour of this. And certainly, in terms of playing politics and building fear, I'll take no lectures from Councillor Brockbank on that.
Can we have a name vote, please?
Yes, that can be a
name vote.
We'll now go to the vote. It will be a named one.
Yes, you are, Chair.
Excuse me. I didn't quite hear the answer. I get free prescriptions as well. So can I vote for this?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, Councillor. Councillor Linda Arkley, are you for or against the motion? Abstaining. Councillor Ken Barry.
Abstain.
Councillor Lewis Bartoli.
For.
Councillor Gary Bell. Are you for or against the motion?
59 and 4.
Councillor Linda Bell. For. Councillor Liam Bones.
For.
Councillor Trish Brady.
For.
Councillor Sean Brockbank.
Abstain.
Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Carol Burdis. Councillor Joanne Cassidy. Councillor Karen Clark. Councillor Debbie Cox. Councillor Stephen Cox. Councillor Julie Cruddas. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Linda Dark. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor Peter Early.
For.
Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Muriel Green.
For.
Councillor Tracy Hallway. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor John Hunter. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Hannah Johnson. Councillor Christopher Johnson. Councillor Joe Kerwin. Councillor Frank Lott. Councillor Wendy Lott. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Maureen Madden. Councillor Pam McIntyre. Councillor Anthony McMullen. Councillor Jim Montague. Councillor Tommy Mulvenna. Councillor Andy Newman. Councillor Pat Oliver.
For.
Councillor John O'Shea. Councillor Stephen Phillips. Councillor Bruce Pickard. Councillor Martin Rankin. Elected Mayor Norma Redfern. Councillor Paul Richardson. Councillor Willie Samuel. Councillor Jane Shaw. Councillor Matthew Thurloway. Councillor Joan Walker. Councillor Judith Wallace. Councillor George Westwater. And Councillor Matt Wilson. Thank you. So we have 46 in favour of the motion, Chair. We have none against and we have 6 abstentions. So the motion is carried, Chair.
We now move on to motion 7. Can I invite Councillor Johnson to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. It's been a week and a half since the integrated rail plan has been released, in over a week, and it's been utter chaos for the government in terms of rail, showing that they got no intention of levelling up our region. In fact, our region is forgotten about in the integrated rail plan completely. On the maps, it shows Newcastle in the Midlands, and the rest of us cut off completely. What does the integrated rail plan do for our region? It cut high-speed rail too. The big benefit of high-speed, people always talk about high-speed rail being about speed. It's not. The big benefit of high-speed rail was about the number and the volume of people you were able to get on the rails around this country. That the East Coast Main Line, as everybody knows, is congested at the moment. It's stuck on a maximum of 6 passenger services per hour. The recent ridiculous consultation that the government actually did scrap would have took one of our Manchester trains away to add an additional London train, because there's an absolute need for an additional train to London. High-speed rail would allow those additional trains. We'd allow up to 9 trains per hour in either direction from Newcastle. That would have been a massive boost to our regional economy. Instead, without it, we're stuck on the same 6 trains with no investment. Northern Powerhouse Rail would have been fantastic for not just the region, but our area in particular. The Northern Powerhouse Rail plans would have seen actual mainline trains going up to the airport for the first time, rather than just the metro. They would have seen proper east-west links. We all know, when we've been on the train east-west, that when you get past Leeds, it seems to take forever to get to Manchester and Leeds and further afield. These would have been genuinely good plans that were drawn up cross-party. Just remember, Transport for the North was not a Labour Party body, it was not a Conservative Party body. That was drawn up cross-party, genuine plans for our region to improve connectivity, thrown away from the government, completely and utterly forgotten about. Closer to home, the Leamside line would have been, as everyone knows, that the Joint Transport Committee in the region, when we put our plans together for our North East Transport Plan, approved again by a cross-party group at the Joint Transport Committee, the Leamside line was absolutely a core part of that in improving our region's economic activity. It's the line that would extend through the old Washington Loop and down through into County Durham. It doesn't directly impact in terms of North Tyneside on rail services, but it massively impacts on the regional economy. We know lots of people from North Tyneside work at IAMP and will work at IAMP in the future, and will work further afield. The government has completely let us down with the Leamside line and just not even bothered progressing it forward as it is. North of York, as is the major issue, continually on the integrated rail plan. There's 2 tracks north of York because successive governments have failed to invest in our area. The IRP curtails the region's economy and will be an absolute economic hammer blow for this region. The Conservative government, far from levelling up our region, have forgotten that it even exists. And I urge everyone to support this motion so we can write to the government and ask them to reconsider the decision on High Speed 2, the integrated rail plan, Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Graham, do you wish to second this motion?
I do, thank you. Thank you, Chair. This integrated rail plan we see now is not integrated and is a major blow for the North East and the people of North Tyneside, who deserve better in this so-called levelling up agenda which is unravelling as we speak. We will be further isolated from other parts of the North, and the ambitious Northern Powerhouse rail network will not be able to grow as needed on our East Coast Main Line, which is absolutely bursting at the seams. Leamside Line was seen as a critical route to help bring in both further passenger routes and take some freight, further unlocking some capacity on the East Coast Main Line. This would crucially add to the green agenda into transport, giving people choice of both personal travel and freight travel, and shift cars and lorries off the road. We can all see empty shelves with the effects of shortages of HGV drivers. Getting some of that freight onto the proposed rail network would be the green thing to do and would help to reduce our carbon footprint and move people and freight to rail. It is so short-sighted, and it will hit an already reeling area with massive inequalities. We need those high-skilled and well-paid jobs for people to aid our economic recovery post-pandemic. A good integrated rail network massively supports that, and this is a missed opportunity, but hardly surprising. Kevin Holland-Rake, MP for Thirsk and Malton, said the downside plans indicated the government was not willing to put our money where our mouth is. Bluster and grinning does not set a level playing field. I hope that our colleagues opposite will support this for our residents and the wider North East and not abstain. I second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. I know Councillor Barry would like to speak. Is there anyone else?
Councillor Bones as well.
Councillor Barry?
Just to pick up a point that Councillor Johnson said, he said that it was 2-track from York northwards. Well, that's not actually correct. It's 4-track all the way to Ferry Hill, and it becomes 2-track through the cut at Durham and all the way until you come to Top End. And it's 2-track all the way up from here.
I'll take your word for that, Councillor Barry.
27 years of working on it.
Councillor Early? Councillor Early?
Thank you, Chair. The government's decision to cut the eastern leg of HS2 line and to downgrade the northern Powerhouse rail network is just one more broken promise in a litany of them from this Tory government. The government continually talks about levelling up in the north, but in reality delivers the exact opposite. Whether it's scrapping HS2 links to the region whilst maintaining those in the south, or raising taxes disproportionately on lower wage earners through national insurance rises, failing to deliver on its promise to use the Shared Prosperity Fund to make up cuts from EU funding, when in reality delivering a reduction in funding to the north of £1.65 billion, or devising a skewed social care cap which favours wealthy homeowners in the south, this government continually fails our region. All the promises about levelling up are just so many words, and the public are onto this con. They realise when it comes to Tory promises, they've been sold a pig in a poke, and it's not even a pepper pig at that.
Councillor Bones?
Thank you, Chair. The Integrated Rail Plan brings forward the single biggest investment in the history of British Railways, £96 billion, which will not only slash journey times, but also bring these improvements forward by a decade or more. The government plan doubles and in some cases trebles capacity, upgrades the East Coast Main Line, fully electrifies and upgrades Trans-Pennine Main Line, going well beyond previous plans. As part of this plan, ticketing has been levelled up too, with a £360 million investment in London-style contactless ticketing across England, which will mean that people automatically get charged the best fare. This system was promised under Labour well over a decade ago, but the Conservatives are actually delivering it. Connecting smaller towns is vital to the levelling up agenda. That's why the government has committed £500 million to start reopening lines closed following the Beeching report, reconnecting smaller towns, regenerating local economies, and improving accessibility to jobs, homes, and education. The Blythe-Nashington line will reopen as part of these plans, connecting thousands of commuters to North Tyneside and Newcastle. Yet instead of praising this economic boost to our area, the Labour Party opposite have decided to focus on the disused line in South Tyneside and Durham. Perhaps they've forgotten which side of the river they're supposed to represent. This plan also removes all diesel-only trains from the network by 2040, instead utilising low-carbon technologies such as hydrogen or battery trains. Significant improvements will also be delivered to regional city public transport networks, with the aim of making them as good as London's. And we're seeing this investment in North Tyneside already, with a fleet of new metros and upgrades to the existing infrastructure to make our local rail network more reliable. I'm reminded of council debates in previous years where Labour in North Tyneside have slammed the government's spending on HS2. At the last meeting, Councillor Bell called it a fancy project, and in fact Keir Starmer himself was a strong opponent of the plans for high-speed rail up until about last week. Now we see Labour lining up to criticise or rethink. It seems that their leadership has really hit the buffers. Previous plans would not have delivered benefits for the North for another 2 decades. For people across the North East, levelling up cannot wait until the 2040s. We support this plan, which delivers more punctual, more frequent and more reliable journeys for people wherever they live, and therefore we will be voting against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Thurlaway.
Chair, I think we should use some money from the reserves to buy a map of the North East and we should send it to London.
Or just to the Labour Party opposite.
Mayor Redfern.
Thank you. It's amazing, isn't it, when the opposition can say we're always against everything. Well, I've been here in the chamber for so many years, and since when has the opposition ever supported anything that we wanted to do? It's amazing. But I just want to say to you, there's a genuine feeling in the region from the businesses that they have been let down. Definitely. You go and talk to them, they feel as though they've been let down by this. There's also been for some time a genuine feeling in the region that this government thinks that the north finishes at the M62, right? And if you look at what's happened in the past, it's very, very obvious that that is a thinking. So I'm sorry, I would like to sort of say this is wonderful thinking and it's great, it's going to do what we want to do. But you've talked to the businesses who are really, really concerned about this. They are not convinced that that will answer their problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. The first point I'd like to make is I think I've just heard Councillor Bones say that Labour suggested the ticketing being a national thing when they were in power, and it's 11 years since the Tories have been here, and he seems to be claiming credit for the fact that they're now finally getting around to delivering it. But I just wanted to point out this is just yet another case of where the government will say one thing, and I have to admit that this comes down to our current Prime Minister, I think, who seems to have a shortage of sometimes he comes away where he's not quite in touch with reality, because he promises things and then he just completely changes his mind, whether it's in the manifesto about the tax rises and things, whether it's the adult social care, which he said he had fixed, and then we find out only last week that he hasn't actually fixed it. There's no money going into it. We're going to discuss a motion any second about this. And he keeps going on about things. He was supposed to have solved Brexit, and there was I remember him saying, there is no line down the middle of the Irish Sea, yet even the DUP said there is.
Point of order, Chair, what's this got to do with the motion?
Because
Brexit and all the rest of it.
It's about his honesty and his integrity and whether he's sticking to the truth. He just says things, and this is a prime example where he's promised HS2 was going to make a massive difference only a few months ago, and now he suddenly announces that it's not going to make a difference, it's not necessary, and he's just withdrawn the funding for it. So I just think it just highlights yet again some of the things that this government comes out with without actually delivering it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Brockbank.
Yeah, interesting points. But I mean, I would just say that it's only this Conservative government that's actually bothered itself to deal with the really big issues of social care, of infrastructure, of dealing with COVID, of managing Brexit. We will take no lessons from the party of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and all the rest of them, Comrade Corbyn, about how to manage the economy and how to get things done. We are dealing with things. Of course, there's going to be issues that need to be dealt with as we go along. But honestly, all of you sitting there should hang your head in shame to think that you can't
has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the motion.
I will come back to the substantive motion. I will come back to the substantive motion.
I'm speaking. And you don't make personal remarks about people in this chamber while I'm in charge.
Your colleague made one about Boris Johnson.
No, I was talking about members of the chamber.
Chair, I'll take your advice on umbrage, but let me be very clear. This is the greatest investment in North East transport infrastructure in the past 50 years. And if people can just carp from the sidelines, then they are not offering any solutions. I haven't heard any solutions about the infrastructure plans or rail plans, apart from let's write the Prime Minister and moan. Give us some solutions then. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that is the problem with the Labour Party in the North East.
Right.
Absolutely, Chair. I think Councillor Brockbank's once again proven he is the Prime Minister's representative of North Tyneside, not the people of North Tyneside's representative in the region, because, once again, he spends more time standing up for the government than he does standing up for our residents. What he said about the greatest investment in infrastructure is just plainly the infrastructure investment in the North East is paltry. What plan do we have? The North East Joint Chancellors Committee has a plan. You would have seen it. In fact, Glenn Sanderson happily voted for it. The new Conservative administration in Durham voted for the plan. We've sent the plan to government. The government considered it as part of the IRP and decided to cut it. There is a plan there, Councillor Brockbank, because your government doesn't want to deal with the plan and put it into place. Thanks to Councillor Barry for raising that. Councillor Barry's absolutely right on the point that he raises, but I'm also thankful for raising Ferryhill. Ferryhill's one of those places in County Durham that's not going to get a station because of the cut to the Leamside line. To Councillor Bones's point, contactless ticketing has been ready for the region. Transport for North first proposed it when Transport for North was first created by the Conservative government. Yet again, the Conservative government kicked it and kicked it and kicked it along the road until at a point when years and years after London, the North might get ticketing if the full business case is approved. Councillor Bones then went to talk about beach and cuts, and I'm delighted he's raised them actually, because we all know the Northumberland line will be fantastic if it goes ahead. But I know the Conservative administration in Northumberland are very much struggling to get final business case approval from the government for the Northumberland line at the full level required. So the beach and cuts again. So what is in this for our region? Do you want to know what's actually in the IRP for our region? With the exception of the ticket list, which is a pan-northern project, what's in the IRP for our region is triple tracking north of Trester Lee Street with minor signal improvements in the region. That is all we get from this entire integrated rail plan. That will not deal with the capacity issues on the East Coast Main Line. It is an absolute disgrace that the Conservative opposite will not back us. There is a plan there, as Councillor Brockbank said. It was in the IRP. Write to the government and stand up for the region, for the North Tyneside for once, rather than the government. Thank you, Chair.
We will now move to the vote. Those in favour?
That's 43, Chair.
And those against? We'll now move on to motion 8. Before I start this motion, I need to make a declaration of interest. I forgot the first time around, so I apologise for that. I have a family member who receives adult social care from the council. Can I invite Councillor McMullen to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm proposing this motion as I believe it's the right that people who've contributed to society are looked after when their time comes. The 1.25 National Insurance Social Care Levy, whilst it's set to generate £2 billion nationally, what does this mean for North Tyneside? Where will the wheel of fortune land? Will it be based on age profiles, resident volumes, or even majorities? We've learned just in the last debate about rail that not having money earmarked for a project, doesn't mean it's actually going to materialise. My finance manager training tells me until the payments landed in the bank, there's no guarantee of payment. Whilst government may be dancing around with rail, they're certainly enjoying a U-turn. Can you remember the 2019 promise that you wouldn't have to sell your home for social care? So again, we ask this council to support the care workers of North Tyneside and the residents that we treat the social care with the same respect that we do with the NHS and properly fund it so it's free at the point of use and not something that the family has to sell their home for. Can you just imagine some resident who's living with their parents or their parent goes into care, the parent unfortunately passes, they not only have to deal with the loss of their loved one, but they're also homeless. Is that what we want as a society? I don't think so. I'll move.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McMullen. Councillor Kerwin, would you like to second this motion?
Second and reserve the right to speak, Chair.
I'll now invite anyone who wishes to speak.
Councillor Bartoli.
Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you, Chair. As the whole Chamber is aware, the pressures from the COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant disruption to the provision of health and social care across the UK, with the response inevitably reducing the capacity to respond to non-COVID-19 related cases. We now have 5.5 million people in England waiting for non-emergency treatment, an average NHS waiting time of over 10 weeks, up around 40%, and an estimate that a number of people waiting for treatment could reach 13 million. ONS has estimated the UK government spending on health increased by around 25% in 2020, the biggest year-on-year increase since the ONS began. This government wants NHS funding to be put on a more sustainable footing so that it can rise to the challenges of the 21st century, and is investing an extra £36 billion in the health and care system over the next 3 years, including £4.5 billion into adult social care. In order to fund such a significant increase in spending, the government has made the difficult but responsible decision to increase taxes under the new health and social care levy. This levy is based on national insurance contributions, which means that every individual should contribute according to their means, and means the cost of improving our health and social care system is shared between individuals and businesses. Importantly, the levy will not apply to Class 2 or 3 national insurance contributions, which means that the highest 14% of earners will now be paying around half of the revenues of the levy, and no one earning less than £9,568 will pay a penny, and there'll also be a legal requirement to allocate the levy revenues for spending on health and social care. I know that the party opposite want to think of themselves as the party that represents the least well off, but the impact of these recent combined tax and spending announcements means that lower income households will be net beneficiaries from this package, with the poorest households gaining more as a proportion of income. The 20% highest income households will contribute more than 40 times that of the 20% lowest income households. And over a third of the overall tax increase will come from the top 10% of households, with the majority coming from the top 20% of households. The new system, whilst not perfect, is progressive and much better than the existing one. And under these reforms, no one will lose out, whilst the majority will be better off. The threshold for getting council tax support to pay for care costs will be more generous, with people with assets of up to £100,000 able to qualify, rather than £23,250 currently. So the new system is addressing a long-standing social injustice. But the key issue with this motion is that it once again shows the lack of any plan from Labour, who have offered no alternatives and have no policy of their own. At our meeting in September, Mayor Redfern said that she was delighted to see someone doing something about social care, as neither party has been brave enough in the past. And Councillor Bell stated that the Labour Party have not got a policy on this issue, as far as he was aware. Sadly, this is another in a long line of Labour motions like we've seen from the one before, which offers no alternative, no plan, no policy, whilst decrying every attempt the government makes to improve the living standards for everyone across the UK. Well, we in the Conservative group stand proudly with Mayor Redfern in her delight to see the government tackling one of the most long-standing and difficult issues in the UK, and we wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Bell that Labour have simply got no plan as far as the Conservative group is aware either. For these reasons, we will be voting against this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bartoli. Councillor Lott?
Thank you, Chair.
Lott.
If the Conservative proposals are as good as Councillor Bartoli has told us, why did so many of the Conservative MPs absent themselves from the vote, abstain from the vote, or vote against it?
Thank you, Councillor Lott. Councillor Bartoli, you've got your microphone on. Mayor Redfern?
I'd just like to say I love the way Councillor Bartoli speaks for me. Well done, thank you very much. But I just want to say, yes, I'm pleased somebody's doing something about social care. But we ain't going to get any money for 3 years, right? And I've just explained to you the pressures we have on adult social care and children's social care. So all I'm going to say to you at the end of the day, great, but we need it now. And what this says, it will be the poorest people that will suffer and come up the worst. And that's not about equality and fairness, let's be honest. That's about the poorest suffering again, Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Councillor Kerwin?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to wait a little bit, but I think I got just a little bit excited about Councillor Bartoli's comments. I ended my speech in September on social care by quoting Jeremy Hunt. And to my own surprise, I think I'll start by quoting him again by saying that this is just another wasted opportunity and this is not a plan. And Councillor Bartoli seems to have a bit of selective memory as well, because he can remember what Councillor Bell said and what others said, but he doesn't seem to remember that I actually told him what Labour's plan was. And I also mentioned that we set out a plan in 2010, 2015, 2017 and 2019, and I told him where to go and find it as well. So it's a bit upsetting that he hasn't taken the time to go and read it, because we do have a plan. We've told you the plan, but what this government is doing, what Boris Johnson is doing, isn't a plan. It's just throwing money at a broken system, money which we have to wait 3 years to get, and actually there's no guarantee we'll get it in 3 years' time either. So we're still hoping against hope for that. But most importantly, what this motion sets out is that this government is breaking another promise it made to the people, and people will not have to sell their home to pay for care. This is going to happen in this borough, where we're going to have our residents having to sell their home to pay for their care. A promise made by your government, a promise made by Councillor Bartoli when he ran for Parliament as well himself, which he's clearly willing to break right now. Maybe to get some additional support elsewhere, who knows. This is just a working class dementia tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kerwin. Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair. Just on social care, I just want to support my colleague when he says about this is the first time it's been tackled. Previous Labour governments never went near this subject. You didn't know and you didn't care enough to tackle it. So we are actually at least addressing this situation. No one is worse off under the new legislation than the current rules. And no one will have to sell their home while they're living there. It's a completely false argument to compare house values. What counts is how each individual person is affected. And the basic point of this whole thing is everyone, and I mean everyone, will be better off due to these changes. Because you never did anything at all when you were in government.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Councillor Thirlaway.
I find it outrageous that this policy benefits millionaires more than the people who are living in £100,000 houses. It's not really going to protect their assets, it's protecting the assets of millionaires. We are subsidising care fees for millionaires. You know, if you live in a £500,000 house, you know, you're better off under this scheme than someone in a £100,000 house. You know, it should be the other way around.
Thank you, Councillor Thirlaway. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to echo what some of my colleagues have said there. I think it could have been an attempt for more proportionate equality, and I think in fact it's just enshrining more inequality and penalising the poor yet again. And I think colleagues on the other side, councillors on the other side of the room, sorry, it's the same as the prescription comments made in relation to that. It's not the same effect if you're a millionaire having to pay for a prescription or pay for your social care as it is if you're on low income and you've got minimal assets. And I think that's a fundamental point the Tory councillors miss in this borough and also the Tory government. Thank you.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. The government plan was long-hailed and it is an utter disappointment. I mean, it's better than the previous plan, which was we'll force councils to put up a social care levy which will go directly to the residents. This plan is a bit better than, you know, forcing residents, hard-working council taxpayers to pay in that way, but it's a bit from taking Peter to pay Paul and making them pay a different way now. Residents, I can't believe the comments that residents will not have to sell their homes. And Councillor Bartoli did some fine sums when he got his times table out, and he said about 20 times higher. The reality is that in North Tyneside, 40% of the value of your home will go, on average, with the £86,000 cap, but in Kensington and Chelsea, only 6%. How do you suggest that people, if North Tyneside make up that 40% equity in their home, how do you expect them to keep their home and not have to sell it? In the Battle Hill ward, which I represent, the average house price is £132,000. 86,000 of 132,000 is a lot. Are you expecting the good residents of Battle Hill to put £86,000 to keep their home? They will have to sell their home to pay for social care. Another Conservative broken promise. It's absolutely remarkable that Councillor Bartoli does forget that the Labour Party absolutely does have a plan. And the Labour Party's plan is that those with the broadest shoulders will pay more. Councillor Bartoli said he supports the laws of the broadest shoulders paying more when he got his times table out. But this plan does not actually do that. It means that the poorest people will pay more and those with the broadest shoulders will pay less. We absolutely need to oppose this plan. And of course, this party doesn't, this council, of course, it can only go from the sidelines and oppose government policy. We're not in government. And I know it might take Councillor McIntyre by, but it's been 10 years since the Labour Party were in government. Now, it's time to stop talking about what plans the Labour Party did or did not do in government. You've had 11 years to fix social care yourselves, and you've done absolutely nothing about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Gary Bell.
Thank you. Chair, I've done a lot of research into this policy by the Conservative Party, and I do welcome the 1.25% rise in national insurance. I welcome any rise in national insurance or tax to pay for adult social care, children's social care, and adult, and NHS. That's what's part of being like a left-wing socialist is. I think obviously Boris Johnson's obviously woke that fact as well. So because it wasn't his manifesto, so it's good news. It's going to raise a lot of money, but adult social care is at the tail of the dog. It's going to take a long time to get through. We need it now. And the problem he's got is he said no one have to sell the house. And technically, in a way, it's true. But if you die, when you die, your asset's lost. So if you had a house, say, for £100,000 in North Tyneside and you went to residential care, the £86,000 would be taken off you when you died. So that's like £14,000 left. The average house price in the UK is about 250,000, so you'd have £170,000 left. And for those looking up to live in £1 million houses, have £900,000 left. So it's an unfair tax. And I'm hoping that when it goes through the Lords, there's another way of doing it. You can do it by percentages. And I think the Lords may amend this. There's some good aspects to this policy, where the fact that if you get domiciliary care coming in you don't pay for, or there's somebody living in the house, if you go in residential care, eventually you might have to pay for it. But there is some good points to it. But the point is that it is a tax which is the lowest in society wage-wise are going to pay more for it. And when they die, they're going to have the assets taken off them. So I think the Lords may amend it, and I think the backbench Conservatives will put pressure on the government to change this, and hopefully they do. And if they're coming together with a plan which is feasible, I'd like to support them, because I think it's a good idea, and it's in the main aspects of it.
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly surprised that the party opposite thinks that something needs to be done, because everyone sat and said it, and yet every single year you vote against us when we have to put up the adult social care precept. So you accept that something needs to be done, then you vote against the only mechanism that we actually have to try and fund the local care market properly. So if we do then look to put it up this year, I'll presume that you'll actually join with us on that, because you can't say something needs to be done and then actually vote against the only way of raising money for it. The cap at £86,000 is false because it doesn't actually cover the cost of subsistence. So anyone who goes into care will actually pay far more than that. And I have massive concerns with that because it affects a huge number of my residents. If you look at the average house price in somewhere like, say, Churton Grange, the average house price is £120,000. That means that if you need care and you go into care, you'll have worked all your life, you'll have bought your house, you'll have done all the things that Margaret Thatcher wanted you to do. And then what will happen is you will be left with nothing. You will pass nothing on to your children because all of it will go in care costs. It is a massive, massive con. I've also got a problem with the fact it's being raised by National Insurance as well, because Councillor Bartoli said it's means tested. It's not really. National Insurance isn't means tested because it's only based on the income that you earn from work. So it catches people who work. What it doesn't capture is things such as dividends and things such as rents. So someone could have a property portfolio worth £5 million that could generate £500,000 a year in rent, and they won't pay a penny into this system. Whereas you have nurses and you have people earning sort of low amounts of money and they will pay. So I don't know how anyone can say that it's means tested, because it's not. It only captures a section of society where people actually have earned income. It doesn't capture anything from the point of view of unearned income. So as I say, I've got massive concerns. It affects a huge number of Collingwood residents, and I think it's wrong, and so I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin.
Chair, I don't mean to interrupt, but just for the record, I did not say it was means tested. So I think on that point you may have misheard.
I think he did. So obviously it's videoed. So what I'll do is, if I'm wrong, I'll apologise, and if I'm right, you can say that you did say it. Okay.
Are we all happy?
Thank you.
Are we all happy? I'm so pleased to hear that. Councillor Julie Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Most really of everything I was wanting to say has been covered by colleagues, but I think this is actually nothing less than a tax on the poor, and I think we need to actually just name it. You know, members of government and backbenchers have actually displayed and spoken publicly against this. So members across the chamber might want to consider that and how they vote on this. It is nothing less than a tax on the poorest.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Councillor Pickard.
Thank you, Chair. People have already talked about the 1.25%. However, to add into that, the issue about the 86,000 cap by the government is wrong, because it allows people then to say, oh, well, everybody's going to be better off, without seeing the full consequences, which are contained in the government paper. It'll come to Parliament at a much later stage. It's at that stage where the overall effect of this would have been better off discussed. Because at the minute in that paper, which is yet to be discussed, it talks about things about being for personal care. It doesn't actually define what the personal care is. It doesn't define, as somebody said, the subsistence. It doesn't define the accommodation costs. Now, all of those are additional to that. And even under the old Dilnot report, it had something about 7,000 to 10,000. And we reckon here, we're talking about, say, 12,000 above, added to that money that you're actually going to be paying for that care. It doesn't define social care. Everyone has this idea if it's older people who are in a care home. It's not. It could well be people with long-term disabilities. Younger people, it's not defined yet, and that's why it should be debated within that particular area. As was mentioned before, you know, it's wrong that a person with £1 million in assets will pay exactly the same amount of money for social care as a person with 100,000. Yet it's not defined yet whether that's individual, whether it's joint, or whether it's family assets, or whether it's business assets. There's no clear definition of either what social care is or what your assets are actually going to be. And that's why to bring this forward at the minute is actually wrong and deceiving the public into thinking that there's actually here in this proposal something that will cure the long-term effects of social care. And it really is annoying that we don't ask people and parents to pay up front for primary and secondary education because it's paid for out of taxation for when you actually need it. We don't ask people to pay for National Health Service procedures because it's paid at the point of need and also what your own need. So why is it that if you're unfortunate enough to have a long-term illness, that the length of and the quality of the care that you get depends on how wealthy you are and not how much in need you are? That cannot be right in a civilised actually society. People, I think, generally believe that general taxation is the way forward to pay for this type of service. You hope, like the health service, that you pay into it all your life and never get a penny back out of it. Because if you do, it means that you're ill or that you've got such complex needs that you require that service. And I'm sure that people in North Tyneside recognise that that's a much fairer resolution to this, rather than saying you have a cap of 86, which creates a north-south divide split. And if you remember our own Director of Public Health showing us how bad the inequalities in health were in North Tyneside, that goes up and down. That leads to more long-term health problems, which leads to a greater need for social care. And that helps divide, not only the divide between capital, but also the divide between poverty, wealth and inequality. And it further isn't about levelling up, it's about keeping the north down and about keeping the resources in the south, not helping the people in the north. We need our services provided for by taxation on the point of need and not to be met by private insurance companies who can go around ripping people off for care costs, which are extortionate in this country. And it needs also to be brought into the whole remit of the health service and the councils working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Councillor Brockbank.
Yeah, just really a point of, just point of clarity really on both motions. There aren't any financial or legal implications expressed, and I appreciate both motions have financial and legal implications, and that would tend to be the predication of most of the emotive arguments we've heard tonight. Just wondering why that hasn't been made available to the Conservative group.
I'll answer that quite briefly. Obviously, both motions seek as a single action for the Mayor to write a letter, and therefore the implications for the Council, both in legal and in financial terms, are nil. There would be consequent implications if changes that the Council suggested were then adopted by Government, and at that stage they could be assessed. But the implications of the motion as it stands is nil on both legal and financial.
Thank you very much. I mean, Boris might change his mind, you never know, but thanks. Yeah.
Councillor McMullen, would you like to reply?
Just that, if needs be, the direct implications of the 50p stamp, I'm happy to contribute myself. And can we move to the vote?
Yes, we can now go to the vote. All those in favour of the motion?
Name vote.
Oh, the main vote, I beg your pardon.
Here we go again.
Well, I thought we were going to the main vote. Oh, a named vote.
Yes.
Sorry.
So, this is votes for or against the motion. So, Councillor Linda Arkley. Councillor Ken Barry. Councillor Lewis Bartoli.
Against.
Councillor Gary Bell.
For.
Councillor Linda Bell. Councillor Liam Bones. Councillor Trish Brady.
For.
Councillor Sean Brockbank. Councillor Brian Burdis. Councillor Carol Burdis. Councillor Joanne Cassidy. Councillor Karen Clark. Councillor Debbie Cox. Councillor Steve Cox. Councillor Julie Cruddas. Councillor Eddie Dark. Councillor Linda Dark. Councillor Sarah Day. Councillor Peter Early.
For.
Councillor Sandra Graham. Councillor Muriel Green.
For.
Councillor Tracy Hallway. Councillor John Harrison. Councillor Janet Hunter. Councillor John Hunter. Councillor Carl Johnson. Councillor Hannah Johnson. Councillor Christopher Johnson. Councillor Joe Kerwin. Councillor Frank Lott. Councillor Wendy Lott. Councillor Gary Madden. Councillor Maureen Madden. Councillor Pam McIntyre. Councillor Anthony McMullen. Councillor Jim Montague. Councillor Tommy Mulvenner. Councillor Andy Newman. Councillor Pat Oliver.
For.
Councillor John O'Shea. Councillor Stephen Phillips. Councillor Bruce Pickard. Councillor Martin Rankin. Elected Mayor Norma Redfern. Councillor Paul Richardson. Councillor Willie Samuel. Councillor Jane Shaw. Councillor Matthew Thurloway. Councillor Joan Walker. Councillor Judith Wallace. Councillor George Westwater. Councillor Matt Wilson. Thank you, councillors. That is 43 in favour of the motion, Chair, and 9 against, so the motion is carried.
Thank you. It's 8:15. We still have a number of items to get through, so I'm going to call a 10-minute break. 10 minutes only, please. I'm so honoured, but you're fine. Item 7 North Tyneside Council Statement of Licensing Policy, and I believe Councillor Burgess is going.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to advise Council of the final proposals for the 3-year review of the North Tyneside Council Statement of Licence and Policy for Gambling. The authority is required to produce and publish a Statement of Licence and Policy under the Gambling Act 2005. The review of the policy is every 3 years. The formulation of the policy is a shared responsibility between Cabinet and Council. The last policy took effect the 31st of January 2018, and the next policy must be in place by the 31st of January 2022. This is a comprehensive document covering the responsibilities that the authority has, which includes protecting vulnerable persons from being exploited by gambling. The policy also includes safeguarding and preventative measures for those who have been identified as having problematic gambling habits. It should be noted, however, that our licensing powers do not extend to online gambling. This is an area the nationally based Gambling Commission regulates. Nevertheless, online gambling is a matter we take very seriously, in particular with the associated addiction problems it creates. There are minor amendments to the policy, such as an update information for permits and requirement to consider our responsibilities under the public sector equality duty when formulating this policy. As in previous reviews, it is also a requirement to consider the current no casino resolution. The policy was subject to a 6-week consultation exercise which included all licence holders, the police, residents, local businesses, as well as councillors and MPs. In total, 55 responses were received. A summary of those responses are attached at Appendix 2 to this report. The responses in the majority indicated a wish to retain the no casino resolution. I move that we adopt point 1.2 of the report and those recommendations under item 1 and 2.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Do you have a seconder?
I second the Chair and suggest we move straight to the vote because I know Councillor Brockman's
Yeah, I understand that has been agreed. So peace and harmony is broken out. We'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Again, unanimous, Chair.
Item 8. Can I ask the elected mayor to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Council has received a report in relation to a proposal from the Local Government Boundary Commission for England to carry out a periodic review of the Council. Those members who've been here for some time may remember that in 2002, the Commission decided to carry out a review of our ward boundaries and the number of members. Their work took a little over a year, and at the end of it, the Council held out all elections in 2004. Since then, our wards and council numbers have stayed the same, even though the borough has grown. Now, after almost 2 decades, the Commission has decided it's time to review North Tyneside Council wards and council numbers. At the moment, we're awaiting a formal start date for the review, and members will be informed once we receive that. But it is important that members are aware that the review will start in the very near future, with an intended implementation date of 2024. This means that, assuming the review is finished on time, the 2024 elections will be for all ward members in the borough. Once the review is started by the Commission, members will be informed and will be able to feed into the review either through their groups or through the Council, together with the public consultation as shown in the report. Can I therefore ask the Council to note this report?
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Do you have a seconder?
Second report, Chair.
Yeah, again, everybody's okay.
Sorry?
Just ask if there's anything to note the report.
Can we all agree to note this report? Thank you. It seems a long time ago, but it's not so far. I attended the toast to the Admiral and introduce Captain Catherine Jordan of HMS Collingwood, who raised a toast to the great man himself. I was privileged to launch this year's Poppy Appeals in Wallsend and Whitley Bay. This year is the centenary of the British Legion. I represented North Tyneside Council at a ceremony in Saltwood Park, Gateshead, which opened this year's Field of Remembrance. They have a huge field and people can go and lay crosses there for their loved ones. I attended armistice commemoration ceremonies at Killingworth Jigsaw Memorial and at Benton and Whitley Bay. It was a huge privilege and also gratifying to see how well these ceremonies are attended. I also cut a ribbon opening a memorial garden at Howden Community Centre. It's a very moving display and well worth a visit. The cafe is good too, great cakes. And finally, a blue plaque was unveiled last week in Coburg Street in North Shields, which was the home of founder of this animals group. When I said that the other day, one of our younger members didn't know who I was talking about. Shame on you. I recommend that you have a look on YouTube for the animals. House of the Rising Sun, 1964. It became top of the charts in England and America. So it was a huge privilege to welcome Hilton Valentine's wife and invite her and some of his previous band members and listen to them reminiscing about the old days when they had the skiffle groups. He doesn't even know what a skiffle group is. And then Hilton's widow unveiled the plaque, and it was a really lovely ceremony. And that's it. Thank you for listening. Item 3, Mayor's announcements.
Thank you. I think everyone on the council will be aware that this council has received white ribbon accreditation, which demonstrates our commitment to end violence against women and girls. And on Sunday, there will be a walk which says, "Don't ignore violence and abuse." And it's along the seafront, and we're meeting at 11 o'clock at the Priory, and we're walking to Wales. So if you have time and you feel fit, and or you want to get fit, you may be able to come along and join this walk. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say, Chair.
Item 11. One valid question has been received. Councillor Wallace, would you like to ask your question or would take it as read?
Let's take it as read, please, Chairman.
Councillor Johnson, would you respond, please?
Thank you. The authority is currently reviewing various activities that take place on council-owned land and are considering these activities within its existing regulatory powers and framework. These activities include the release of balloons and sky lanterns. Of course, there was a global pandemic when this motion was passed, so things have got a bit delayed, but an ASOC working group was established and is due to report to Cabinet in the early part of 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That's the end of business for this.
Chairman, I have a supplementary question.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a supplementary question. I find it very concerning that so little has happened in such a long time since this motion was passed. And regrettably, it seems that this may not be the only issue affected by delay. In July, I proposed a motion relating to suicide prevention training for staff, which was passed unanimously. Yet, when I inquired as to the progress with provision of that training for our staff, I was told that the motion had been overlooked. Does the elected mayor agree with me that it is entirely wrong that motions of this council are not implemented swiftly?
Chair, first of all, that's not related to the original motion, so it shouldn't have been asked because, you know, your substantive question, your supplementary question has to relate to the original motion. But
it relates to the motion because I'm talking about failure to implement.
We will absolutely look at what's going on with that and we'll implement it as soon as possible. So, yeah, on the original, we will look at that, but it shouldn't have been asked. I shouldn't answer it because the technicality is not allowed, but it will be looked at.
That's the end of business for this meeting. I would like to thank you all very much for your attendance and good night to all.